No, that's not a smoke alarm. That's me. Right, you independent reserve guys in the back row, down the front, please. Lysenko. Come on, Gibbo. Tim McNamara. This night, tonight, I'd like you in the front row, please, sir. Your seat's reserved. A number 3. Thank you very much. Omar, get these guys out of the bar, please. Okay, grab a beer, but we need to fill the seats up. Let's get all these seats nice and filled. We've got exclusive video going out live via satellite. Nuggets news can't make tonight, but he's on the big screen soon. He's on the big screen. Okay. Do we need some more seats? No, everybody's squeezing in. Glenn, seat for you down here, mate. No, Glenn, seat for you here. Lift? Is it? Oh, Tom, there's people downstairs. The lift's not working. Yeah.
How's everything going on your side? Yeah, so we're good. We've got 2 streams. So we've got the...
Oh, you hang on, Omar. Do you need a pass? Tom, Omar, do you want to get Tom's pass? Thanks, mate. Good to have friends. Let them know we're coming down.
2 things. One is...
Okay, yeah. Take a seat. I'll do an intro in a minute. Who else are we missing? George, mate, you're supposed to be up on the seat here, mate. Nuggets on the TV. Okay.
Alex, my brother. Do we speak through here?
Check 1, 2. How's everybody going? This is awesome. Everybody's taking a seat tonight.
I feel bad.
That's great.
For him.
Now, Tom, am I on the camera here? Can you see me? Good. Okay, so thank you very much for coming tonight. Great audience on a wet night. Thank you. Want to throw a big round of applause to the guys at StartCon who host us here. So big round of applause for StartCon. It is... StartCon is Australia's largest startup conference, and I've just negotiated a crypto blockchain channel for that conference, and we will be getting some discounted tickets very soon. So big round of applause for that. And it's on 22nd, 23rd of November. So great news there. Okay, just a quick show of hands. Do we have any new guests here? Anyone who hasn't been to a Crypto Sydney event before? Sick. Okay, 1, 2. Hang on, hands up. Keep your hands high. 1, 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21. Okay, any of those people listen to Nuggets News? There you go. Okay, beautiful. Welcome to Nuggets. It's on the big screen. Congratulations. Can you hear me, Nuggets?
I can hear the microphone. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, mate, you're on. Good. Okay, back to me. I'll call you in a minute, Nuggets. Sorry about that. Ryan, are you here? Where's Ryan? No. Where's Ryan? Ryan, where are you? He did get married, did he? He's hiding. He's hiding from me. He's here somewhere, but his wife didn't turn up. I'm not sure why. Okay, Ryan, if you're here, show your hands, please. Okay, good. Just a quick one, a little bit of housekeeping. We've got a survey coming out. It'll be in your inboxes very soon. If not today, it'll be there tomorrow. And that survey is to help us curate these events to make sure that they're bigger and better and keep you entertained. So please take the time to respond. There's only 5 questions. It'll only take you probably 3.5 minutes to 4.2 minutes if you do it correctly. So if you can reply, that'd be great. If you don't, then you may not get entry at our next event. Okay, so now let's talk about tonight. So a big round of applause for our sponsors tonight is Mind Digital. We've got Grant Coulthard here, who's launching Mind. Put your hand up, stand up, say thank you. So, yep, congratulations. Mind Digital Exchange will be launching in Australia very soon. This is exclusive little intro. Grant's on the panel and tell us a little bit more about that. But I think in July we're going to do a full demo of the new exchange, do some live trading, followed by an exclusive launch party that we will be able to get some of you guys on, if you're lucky. Depends how much trading you're doing. But anyway, so apart from that, I want to thank S2M Digital, which is a company I'm very dear and heartedly and close to. It's Australia's foremost digital recruitment business and has a very amazing blockchain practice. So, which is starting to heat up. Glad to know, getting a little bit of a return out of all this hard effort that I'm doing. So if anyone's looking for a job in blockchain, come and see me. Or Tommy's down here as well. He can help you out as well. And if anyone's looking to hire, that's even better. Pays the bills. Come and see me. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I would like to do now is to just let you know, after this event, thanks to the guys at Independent Reserve, Lysanka, and Adrian, we're going to go to the cidery bar once again. And if we don't hit more than $1,000 on this credit card, you guys aren't invited back next year. Now, that's all right. Tea, coffee, soft drink, water, that's fine. I know the way these guys roll, it's traditionally cocktails. Okay, cool. So you guys are getting a little bit bored here on stage, but now it's time to welcome our esteemed panel. And what a panel we've got. It's awesome. Tonight we're not doing any presentations. We're just going to go straight to Q&A. I've got a few questions to kick it off. But let me introduce Tim Lee, Jonathan Miller, Fred Schebesta, George Salmon, and Grant Coulthard yet again. Big round of applause for our guests, please. Oh,
No, he's not here.
Nugget, I forgot about you, mate. You there?
Right.
Yeah.
If you flew in, you get it.
Nuggets. Yeah, good. Okay, Nuggets. So Nuggets, tell me, how scared do you get flying in wind and rain?
I'm actually not a bad flyer, mate, but it was pretty atrocious this morning, and the flights out of Tassie were cancelled.
Yeah, good. Okay, Tasmania. Anyway, mate, when we do our national tour in August, we're going to come down and see you, so get ready. Launceston, here we come. Mate, while you're there, let's just get straight into a couple of questions. I want you to tell me a little bit more about the Nuggets crypto community, mate. Heard so much about it, but I'm not sure the audience knows the full details, mate.
Yeah, so we do all our free YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff, but when it all started to take off, it really became pretty chaotic on social media, so I wanted to start a group, I guess, that was a little bit more controlled and where everyone was, really passionate about it. So we started a private group, and that's now got 1,300 members, which is everyone from beginners to traders and investors. Yeah, where we just talk about the news and have discussions every day. So that's our main focus at Nuggets News now.
Awesome. Great stuff. Thanks for that. And let's cross it to the panel now. A few little scatterbrain questions here. So we sort of have just come off the back of the Consensus Conference in New York. Few of us were there. Did anyone go to New York and see any of the amazing projects? A couple of people. That's good. But Fred Schebesta was there. Fred, tell us what happened in New York. What interesting projects did you see? And what was the feeling like? How many people were there? All that sort of stuff. Give us a little synopsis.
Yeah, I think, Tim, you were there as well, and which is good. I think this year was a lot less Lambos and more taxis. And what you saw, I think, was... I think there's a couple of trends starting. A lot of talk about IEOs. I went to a presentation, if everyone's seen these. Is it the repackaged ICO? It's an interesting concept, and I think there's a lot of people moving in that trajectory, and I think there's a lot of very interesting projects going that way. And I think that the thinking on it is that some of the best marketing you can do, because some people make a few dollars, and then they get to know the project, which otherwise they might not have. So I went and saw like Huobi's IEO platform and what they're doing there, and I think that's very interesting to look at, IEOs. I think a lot of the, last year was extremely hypey. I mean, like, it was unbearable, the selling, it was too much. But this year, it was very much, people who were there to do business. People who were there to actually put things live, things that are actually being built, things that are genuine and sort of going forward. I was actually on a panel about STOs. Actually, I was on one of the talks, and I think when it comes to STOs, the sort of scene is there's a lot of noise and shuffling about this, but the actual liquidity right now is quite small on Open Finance, for example. It does trade a little bit, but I think a lot of people are looking at actual STOs now as blockchain potentially solving the clearing and not necessarily the broking or exchange. So they're looking at it like, you look at the NASDAQ, right? The NASDAQ used to be basically the let's say, I was going to say the cryptopia of shares. It used to be like very much where doggy stocks traded, penny stocks. And then all the tech companies came in, right? And they were, like, tech companies like Microsoft didn't used to be seen as a very popular stock. And the NASDAQ took all these tech companies in. And these tech companies just took off, and the NASDAQ itself then took off as well, which is very interesting. And I think in the same way, some of these STOs are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to find their angle that's different from shares. And some of the challenges with that, I think, are like, how do you price art? How do you make a model? If you're going to high frequency trade that with a bid and an offer, how are you going to model art price or a very a priceless car or whatever it may be? I think there are new models that are being created, and there are a lot of very smart people working on it. But I think it's going to take a lot longer right now before STOs become the next thing. I think what I also met, I actually met some like real OGs, like Adam Back from Blockstream, and they really filled me with an extreme amount of confidence about Bitcoin and where it's going to go. And one of the things I find, I wanted to share this, I think it's probably one of the number one insights that I took was, I think a lot of people are thinking about what's going to happen with mining and transaction fees. As the block reward goes down, right? So May 2020 and those kind of things are coming up. What's going to happen? And I think what he filled me with the confidence is that, and I think it's quite interesting, is maybe the exchanges themselves eventually might become miners. I know that sounds quite insane, but they have a huge incentive, right, to keep the blockchain and Bitcoin going. And I think they're thinking about, Blockstream's thinking about how to keep Bitcoin going after those block rewards go down. So there are some actually really smart people working on that. They've obviously got their side chains with Liquid and their SEO platform now as well. But people are really, really actively building on Bitcoin itself. And I sort of took a lot of confidence from that about the market. And I think the difference between last year was the market was going like this, and this year the market was going up. And so people were like getting happy again. And so I think there's a lot more focus on that and people coming back into the market.
Awesome, great. We'll cross to Tim Lee in a minute, but I wanted to ask Grant a question that got me thinking trading. So Grant, you're launching the new Mine digital exchange platform here soon, and I heard through the grapevine about some custody products and also insurance. I know the guys at IR have got an insurance product. They're first to launch an insurance product. Fourth in the world, okay, fourth in the world. But Grant, do you want to give us a quick overview? Maybe do you want to introduce mine as well? But I want you to talk about custody insurance for the audience.
So basically, the main purpose of mine will be focusing on fiat to crypto pairs. So AUD USD pairs initially, then also looking to add stablecoin pairs as we advance. And the other main thing that we're working on at the moment is in pretty much final negotiations about securing an AFSL, which will allow us to do derivatives both to retail and wholesale clients. And we are also at the moment, also just finalising a custody and insurance offering. Be very similar to the ones that the guys at IR are offering, but we've got one little thing up our sleeve I think will be quite interesting to a lot of people in this room, but we're just sort of probably still another 2 months away from unveiling that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to cross to the audience. Have we got any questions in the audience? Okay, soon. That's good. Jonathan, quick question for you, mate. What is BitTrade seeing in the market currently?
Well, a bit of optimism, which is nice. I think where we play as well, being an aggregator and acting as broker, we've seen a lot of people coming back with their SMSFs. I think that's maybe partly because people were a bit reticent when it came to the election, and now it's pretty clear that SMSFs are a pretty viable structure to manage assets under. So we're seeing a lot of people like that coming back to the market, looking at long-term positions. So that just kind of shows you, I guess, the attitude that people take to crypto, which is this idea that it's a long-term position. I think that's still fair as far as the way you should think about it, unless you're day trading and kind of really getting algorithmic. But that's the kind of thing we've been seeing. A lot of people coming just back to Bitcoin, and then as you saw it kind of climb very quickly, a very similar pattern to I guess 18 months ago, where people immediately started wanting to diversify because they were worried that they'd missed a run. So similar patterns in the market to 17 months ago, but nowhere near as extreme, and also a different type of customer base. So for us, it's been less about people who are I guess, unfamiliar with markets, and more customers who are coming in who are very familiar with markets. So a more sophisticated kind of attitude to understanding how the risk in this investment plays out. They're very aware, especially from the experience, that it could go the other way. So yeah, it's been positive.
Great, awesome. Any questions from the audience? Great, we've got one hand there, two hands there. Great night tonight. Okay, let me keep going.
Don't ask them.
While you guys keep thinking of some questions. You're going to run me out of mine. But okay, George, we had you here a few months ago, I think it was now, which was excellent. We had a night on stable coins, very informative. Since then, I think Nuggets, we've had a couple of Aussie stable coins launch in the last couple of months. That's about right. So George, tell me, mate, what is happening in crypto, and what's the next thing in crypto?
Yeah, interesting question. Well, it's on. Here?
The light's off, it's on here.
Hello? Okay, cool. So I just want to talk about STOs, I guess, and IEOs based off of what Fred said. So the trend in IEOs has been pretty fierce, and almost every exchange has gotten onto it, and every exchange is trying to do them. But it's kind of a fundamentally broken model at this point, and I don't know that it's going to last as it is, because what is happening is like the seed investors are getting punished in these deals. Instead of being the ones who are the first ones out, like in most deals that they're in, they're the ones who are being trapped. And like, if you get into the private rounds of these deals, you get unlocked to a certain extent. It's the pre-IEO money, which allows for market making activities. So it's expensive to do these IEOs. You need market makers to support the price, obviously, which makes the exchanges comfortable with it and also keeps the price and interest in it. But then you have these IEOs which are happening, which are like small amounts of lottery tickets on the exchanges. But it's really hard for a lot of these projects to keep and support the price over time. Some of them and the exchanges themselves there's paydays involved for exchanges, but there's also other elements to it where projects don't want to pay like millions of dollars for market making to support the float that's coming onto the market and support the price and have stability in the price. So it's kind of like in the next iteration of it, what's going to happen, because like seed investors can't get punished. And in most of these deals, like I've worked on quite a few of them, I invest in them a lot. Seed is always the one who's getting hurt the most in these deals, and that's just not acceptable, and I don't think it's going to be able to last. So like what happens with a lot of this is that you see dumping happening a lot, especially as people get to be unlocked over time. So it's not really a great model. As far as STOs go, I'd say that Fred's spot on about that, but like the real problem is like the metrics around it. Like you're dealing with giant unknowns. So like a lot of these are like rev share tokens or tokens where you're trying to figure out like a percent. Like, so how much of my sales do I actually want to give to everyone as a result of the fundraising? I don't actually know the answer to that, right? Because I don't know how much sales I'm going to have. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm raising a ton of money, but at the same time I want to give some kind of reward and incentive back. So it's like these hardened fine lines around some of this stuff is really hard to figure out like early on in the game. The other problem with security tokens, obviously, is that the infrastructure is not there yet around exchanges and stuff like that. Open finance is there. There's a bunch in Singapore which are coming on board. What's it called? T0 is going to start to do some. But like we're still a little bit a ways away from that happening. So it hasn't been as attractive of a model as it may be. But like it's definitely something that a lot of people are starting to explore because it's an alternative to equity, but it's also not an IEO or an ICO. Gives you some kind of compliance around what you're doing. Maybe less interesting. Maybe the multiples won't be the same. Maybe they'll be better, but it's still like really early in all that as well.
Good. Yeah. So, which is awesome to lead me on to the next question, talking regulation. But big round of applause for Jonathan, who's joining us in here tonight from ASIC. And I was really honoured to have him here. When was it, Jonathan? At the beginning of the year? At our last STO talk, was it? No, it was last year, wasn't it, Nugget? You were up for it as well.
Yeah.
So that's good. So talking about regulation, Tim Lee, you've just come back from Malta, and I know you've been talking to the regulators in Malta. Let's just give us a synopsis of what's happening in Malta re the STO regulation, and then maybe Jonathan can couple that with Australia, and we can get some heavy-hitting debate happening.
I think the first thing that hit me about Malta, and I'll echo exactly what Fred said, In the US, it's very conservative, incredibly conservative, and all the conversation is about, oh, this is going to take a long time, don't know what's going to happen, yada, yada, yada. And there's a lot of regulatory arbitrage that's going on. I met one of the exchanges at the Bid Angels event, which is an angel investment block, and they are registering in Bermuda, and they're about to go live. And when I went to Malta, it was very, very different. The conversation very much with the Maltese regulators. I mean, just to give you an indication, Malta's a small place. There are about 480,000 people that live on Malta. And I was at a pool party on a Saturday night in shorts and a T-shirt, and I had a few of these, to be honest. And there were quite a few people talking just about AML KYC, and I got talking to this guy, and he was the chief operating officer of the regulator. And I was sort of exploring this whole sort of thing that I call the uninformed paradox, where all of us can go to a casino or a race course and we can spend as much as we like, and nobody gives a rat's ass about that, right? Yet, unless we're an accredited investor, we can't actually invest in an STO or in a pre-IPO, which is kind of crazy. So we've been working on some sort of sub-ideas behind our main sort of corporate funding platform, and I pitched this concept directly to the regulator. And 45 minutes later, we were one-on-one just talking, and I've put a presentation to them, and we're waiting to see. Malta is setting themselves up to be the leading edge of regulation, and they have a lot of relationships with other smaller jurisdictions like Liechtenstein, like Dubai, Estonia, the Isle of Man, Gibraltar, a whole variety of smaller jurisdictions. And these other jurisdictions are following on from what they do. These other jurisdictions want to know what Malta is doing so they can follow that model. So it was the idea that the feeling I got in the States was that regulation's coming from the top down in terms of, you know, here are the laws, here are the regulations that date back to the 1930s and 40s, and it's revolution. We've got to change that. It's going to be a nightmare. In Malta, the attitude was, how can we come from the bottom up? And very much, it's this layer of the lower level retail investors that we were trying to promote. And very much they're embracing that 100% in terms of coming from the bottom up. And I think we're going to see, from what I can see, there'll be two forces. You know, there'll be a sort of a bit of a shit sandwich in the middle, I guess, sort of coming from, from the up, down, and down, up. And I think we will see a meeting of those over time. I suspect the levels coming from the SEC and other larger jurisdictions will be a lot slower than the smaller jurisdictions who've got that ability to be flexible on their feet. And I think, if I'm honest, I think Australia actually has the chance to be the fast follower if we actually are nimble on our feet, in my opinion. Because there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening in a lot of these smaller jurisdictions. And if we can follow some of those models and just see how they progress and then be a fast follower, we've got an opportunity, I think, to get a lot of investment and a lot of structures within the Australian market. But certainly, I think top down and bottom up is where I'd see it coming from.
Shit sandwich, fast follower, Tim Lee. You heard it here first. Okay, I've got a few more questions asked, but there was a couple of questions here in the audience. Tom, we on?
Check 1, 2.
Oh, here. Catch.
I actually just wanted to know what the backgrounds of the presenters were, that's all.
Great question. Let's run through that very quickly, gentlemen.
Okay, Tim Lee, we've got a new project that's just come out of stealth mode called Fractonium. We're creating a digital funding platform that's going to turn corporate funding on its head. Instead of looking at debt and equity, we're looking at blended structures of debt, equity, and a variety of tokens underneath it all.
Very concise. Jonathan Miller. From BitTrade, we have kind of two main streams. We've got a trading platform, which is a market aggregator with a self-service portal and an OTC desk, so you can do larger value trades. And then we also do consulting. I do a fair bit of work in consulting around blockchain and building systems, and happy to talk about that tonight if anyone's interested. And I think Dave has a couple of questions around that.
My name's Fred Schebesta. I'm one of the co-founders of Finder.com.au, also Finder.com, obviously. And also, we've started an OTC desk called HiveX.com, where we do over-the-counter trading. We pride ourselves on premium service.
My name's George. I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none.
What's your URL?
Semantics.com.
Semantics.com. Check it out. You'll love it.
So Grant Colthorpe, as DJ said, now heading up Mine Digital. Prior to that, had a 15-year career as a proprietary trader and portfolio manager.
Great. Nuggets?
So I'm a pharmacist by trade, but I've been into Bitcoin since 2012, and Nuggets News is Australia's largest source for crypto education on YouTube, podcast, website, all that sort of thing.
Awesome. While you're there, Nuggets, tell us what's happening at Nuggets. What's new? You know, just tell us something interesting.
We've just employed a writer because all those articles was probably one of the missing pieces to the puzzle in terms of all the other video content and stuff we produce. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that. We're launching a newsletter because it's just become so busy. Every day it feels like there's 10 news items and stuff happening. So we wanted to condense all the good stuff down and make that easier for everyone to follow. But I guess our focus is just growing our educational database and our following at the moment.
Great. Questions from the audience? Here we go. Lasenka from Independent Reserve. Catch.
Hey, hi Alex. Fred, you guys do have kind of similar business models. Wanted to ask where you guys kind of differ and set yourselves apart on the crypto side particularly.
Yeah, I guess at Finder we compare all the exchanges. Independent Reserve is on there. And you can see all the fees and all the prices for all the coins that you want to buy all around the world. And we do that in 20 different countries. We obviously run a YouTube channel which talks mainly more about trading. I think Alex, is coming on the show. And I think I've been on Alex's show as well, which is kind of cool. I don't know if that's...
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've never thought of Fred's channel as a competitor. I think we cover really different things, actually. So, yeah.
Especially some of my interviews of recent have been quite spicy.
Okay.
Yeah. I can talk a bit about that if you want. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but...
Any questions from the audience? Here we go.
Hey, Mitchell from Bron ID. I kind of want to talk about total market capitalization and that graph in particular. I think it's one of the more interesting ones, particularly if you think Bitcoin can go above 60% again and how high Bitcoin has to sustain to be the trading pair in terms of total market capitalization.
Few people will have a thought on that one.
I've got a really general comment, which is that I think and this might sound pessimistic, but I think most people who enter the market struggle to differentiate between the pairs. Technically, they differentiate between them from a branding point of view. So Bitcoin has the strongest brand, but the majority of people who are coming in and trading other pairs, in our experience, are people who understand what Bitcoin is and then understand that they're trying to invest in new technologies as far as infantile speculative investments as part of the far high risk corner of their portfolio, and they want to differentiate from one of those crypto pairs into others. And so I don't know how what that makes you think when it comes to your question. But to me, it says that you'll always see a spread on these pairs irrespective of the underlying fundamentals at the moment, and while we're in this speculative phase. I don't have a view as to what level Bitcoin will need to become the base trading pair for all crypto markets.
I think that, probably kind of an unpopular opinion, but Bitcoin domination index going above 60, going towards 65, 70 is a super unhealthy market. I think it doesn't matter what the market cap is as long as the market cap of the space goes up in total. So for example, if Bitcoin is only 5% market cap in a $10 trillion market, it's still probably the most dominant of all cryptocurrencies or something along those lines. So it will sustain being the biggest trading pair that there is. I think like some of these will, top 10, top 20 maybe as we go down the path, will be trading pairs versus other cryptos if they sustain value that's pretty high. So for me, like, I want to see Bitcoin domination go down. Actually, I want to see it sub 20 in the next 5 years, if not sooner. That tells me that the market in total is growing all over the place, and that would still make Bitcoin probably by far the biggest asset. Could be worth 100,000 for all we know, something along those lines, and you still have a huge and robust marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, the corollary on that as well is the FX market, where obviously US dollar trading is still the main pair, but I mean, you've seen over the last 30 years where you would have had yen domination was much higher, you've had euro domination come and go, pound domination, so well, not domination, but much proportionally much higher trading. So in FX, you think about it, it's really about the top 15 pairs that trade fairly liquidly and that people would consider when they're trading, in that sphere. So there's no reason why we can't see the same happen in digital assets, where you end up with, probably say 8 or 9 like currencies in that top pair. Then you might have, some blockchains in there, and then you might have that killer DApp that ends up right up there as well. But yeah, I'm with George. It can't, if it goes past 70%, that's not good. But I think you can have it wane of its dominance and still have a good market.
Next question. I'll come over there in a minute, sir.
This question doesn't come from Independent Reserve, Australia's best exchange, if not the world's. But this comes just for you, Grant. In terms of IEOs, we've spoken about this a little bit tonight already. How do you see yourselves getting involved in that space at all?
Yeah, would be very reticent to be involved in that space, and mainly that's because of, I think at the moment the best quality issuers would be very hard to attract onto a new platform. So you think about Binance are willing to support these projects. They guarantee market making, so they guarantee liquidity and things like that. So if you're the owner and you're the investors into a very, very high quality project, that's where you're sort of going to want to push yourself. And that's then when I get very uncomfortable about looking at doing an IEO of a second or third tier project who would sort of be comfortable with where, with not, of trying to get listed, but not having that underlying quality to really drive it forward. Like George, personally, I've been involved in a couple, and one of them recently, it was just a complete disaster. So the exchange claimed it sold it. It literally sold less than 20 grand worth of tokens. So yeah, I'm very skeptical over the IEO model like these guys at the moment.
Fred, what's happening with the OTC volumes at the moment, mate?
Yeah, OTC is really interesting. We're seeing like a lot of interest. I've been seeing a lot of interest in stable coins. I think a lot of people back to Bitcoin. And then just of recent, we've seen some really interesting diversification, which is interesting. And I think that's been, we've seen that in the general market as well. A lot of interest in some other new services that we've been getting inquiries about, which is, new. And I think it's fresh. I think it goes to your point, Grant, as well, about, institutions and things like that. I know you've talked about that in the past. And I think we're starting to get a lot of those inquiries to coming inbound, which is different. But it just gives us a good pathway of where we can go. And I think people are appreciating the service, and they're getting used to that convenience. So I do think there is sort of an exchange customer and an OTC customer, and you use them for different things, and it's awesome. I think it's great that we've got a really healthy market, and the two are working, I think, quite nicely together.
Good stuff. Any questions? Yes, Cyril, sorry.
I'm hoping the BTC rise is not just a pump and dump, but if we knew who was buying, right? So I mean, if it was like 4 or 5 people, obviously someone de-identified, we could almost prove that it was a pump and dump. I mean, what do you think about that? Is there a chance that it could be a pump and dump?
I mean, I think it's really, really quickly. Maybe it's hard for Alex to jump in, actually. You got to yell, mate. You've got to second
Hang
time
on,
delay.
Nuggets,
It's
did you
quick
have
on the
an
buzzer.
Nuggets, did you have an answer to
You
that?
gotta be quick on the buzzer, buddy.
Yeah, I was just going to say we
Thanks.
did a video about all the metrics that pointed to Bitcoin bottoming, and the whales accumulating was one of those. But compared to 6 or 12 months earlier, when Bitcoin was just going lower and lower, there's a lot of metrics that have turned up. So I don't think you can say it's just a few people sort of manipulating Bitcoin higher. I think there's a lot of things that are showing on-chain activity and rotation and all that sort of thing heading in the right direction.
Can I be a bit controversial? I tend to agree that it is a pump and dump because I think there are a lot of headwinds that Bitcoin is facing personally. I think with the launch of Facebook stablecoin, if that comes out, where they're trying to raise $1 billion and they're trying to raise money from MasterCard and Visa, the cost of acquisition of a new customer for Facebook is zero, right? It just goes via the Messenger app or via the WhatsApp app. And so that's a massive headwind to one of the core fundamentals of Bitcoin. I have extreme doubts myself about the true underlying value of Bitcoin. If I'm brutally honest, I'm happy to take any contrary opinion. But when you also marry that with the case law that's come out of the Tezos, the group class action against Tezos. The class action actually was held in New York, and it was identified that because the number of Ethereum nodes that were supporting Tezos, 41% of the nodes were based in the US, they defined that even though Tezos did not allow US investors, case law has defined that was seen as falling under the US jurisdiction. So I think for me that has tremendous adverse effects on decentralization as a concept. Now, whether that's going to be appealed or not is a different issue, but I think there are so many headwinds that Bitcoin is facing that the fundamentals are not as strong as they were 2 years ago when Facebook weren't talking about this and Samsung weren't talking about their own stablecoin and Amazon rumored to be doing the same. So for me, it just doesn't feel quite right. And I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right. I'm having a conversation with a few people before coming on stage, and very much that feel that it just doesn't feel as if there's enough good news to be getting this Bitcoin up there.
Can I take a stab at that? I'd say that Facebook isn't competing with Bitcoin; it's competing with the U.S. dollar. And I would probably say that the headwinds around Bitcoin, for me, it's non-governmental, censorship-resistant money. That is not what Facebook is trying to become. And for me, as we have seen in recent activity globally from a financial perspective, there are all sorts of manipulations of fiat currencies happening. Money is being censored, capital controls in China, Venezuela, et cetera, et cetera. There are hyperinflationary events all the world. I think the specific use case around Bitcoin is a very different use case than it is for Facebook. Facebook wants to compete with the US dollar. Bitcoin wants to give people control of their money where they have currencies that every day are being devalued and are worth less and less. Yes, Bitcoin's volatile, but these things are much more volatile, but also you can own them even if you have a small little tiny mobile phone. You can get your hands on Bitcoin. This is something, and also it's not government issued. So for me, it's a different type of use case. Not to say that it might be overvalued or undervalued, but there's specific types of there's a specific reason why people are putting this into portfolios as diversification against a lot of other asset classes.
So Bitcoin's not dead; it's still alive.
And going high.
Should have had George on the panel, but I had so many people wanting to debate that it was alive. The only person that I had that was going to debate it was dead was my mate Alex, mutual friend with Fred, who did a sterling job on stage up here with James Jansen,
Yeah.
Dr. James
He's a good
Jansen.
guy,
But I came up with that idea for the great debate last month with Tim Lee. And Tim was going to stand on stage and debate that Bitcoin is dead.
No,
So-
Bitcoin's dying, not dead.
Dying.
I think it has very limited use case. I
Mate,
completely
we should
agree.
have done the copyright correctly. But just a quick question. We just had election. Doctor, how did you go?
Not well.
Come on, talk us through. Oh, talk us through it. Dr. James Jansen from the Science Party. How was it?
I'm not Prime Minister.
No.
You guys might not know I'm not Prime Minister, so it's a shame.
Okay.
But we did pretty well. We had the highest result in the Sydney electorate that we've ever had, so we went up to 3.5%.
Right.
So
Wow.
things are
Awesome.
on the up and up for the Science Party.
Perfect.
So maybe next time we'll be, in contention for a serious seat.
Perfect. So if anyone's disgruntled with their local parliament or their local politician or the party that they vote for, talk to Dr. James Jansen. He'll be here later on. He's coming down to the bar, so get all this political information out of him that you want.
I think I just want to add a couple of points, but to why, just to remind everyone, there's a lot of news right now, and everyone's probably feeling a little bit uncomfortable with prices and where it's moving. I just wanted to remind everyone about, the difficulty of Bitcoin just hit its all-time high. Petahashes are just flying up. There's going to be a 5.6% increase in difficulty coming up because of all the mining that's being added. That network effect, that defense and the value that's baked into every Bitcoin and the protection of it, that's the thing that keeps it safe and valuable. That's not going anywhere. That's huge amounts of people that are investing into that. I think another thing you got to look at is there's actually a massive brand around Bitcoin. To just globally get a brand out there, and I've spent personally a lot of money on branding and TV
Bitcoin.
for Finder.
Oh, sorry.
I've actually
Raven.
I'm just saying, to build a brand is very expensive, and there is a lot of communities and marketing and that effect around it that is not it's just not going to stop today. And I think, Tim, if Bitcoin's, I think we had this challenge last time when I was sitting on stage. I think you questioned me. I believe it was 1.5 years ago. You said the exact same thing to you, and I said, if Bitcoin's not any good, give me all your Bitcoin right now. So I'm going to give you the challenge. If you think it's going to die, hand it over to me right now.
Hand it over, baby.
We'll see what happens.
You buy it at a premium, though, will you?
But I would say a couple of things. And don't get me wrong, the technology behind Bitcoin is amazing. I think Bitcoin as an innovation was fantastic. I'm not disputing that. I think if you look at the abstract of the original white paper, that it says it's a digital, a peer-to-peer digital cash that enables the ability of cash to be transferred from one person to another without going through a financial institution. That is in the abstract. And the key thing is, if you have the Facebook stablecoin, and I take on board your point that it represents a different kind of infrastructure, it takes away the mantra of that abstract. And for me, people don't care if it's Bitcoin or if it's fried chips, whatever it is. If they can get money transferred instantaneously, internationally, for almost zero cost, that's all that people care about. And from a VC, any venture capital perspective, when you look at the cost of acquiring a customer, the CAC, it's a key metric that venture capitalists look at and financial people look at. The CAC for Facebook is zero. Right? They've got the Messenger app, they've got the WhatsApp app. Everything is in there. You just enable that to happen. Bitcoin, in terms of its actual adoption, I appreciate the brand value. I appreciate there's a brand value. But in terms of, what's the percentage of people that actually own Bitcoin? It's probably, and I'd be interested in everybody's opinion on that, it's probably between 0.5 and 1% maybe. Is that a reasonable estimation? I don't know.
Or less. Or less.
Right, okay.
But
Can I jump in here as well?
Yeah, Nuggets, you're on, and then Dr. James, I think, has got a Nuggets, you're on.
I was just going to say, in terms of Facebook being a competitor, there's a lot of research around stablecoins being fairly boring, and the fact that it goes up in price is what keeps people coming back to crypto and checking their app and all that sort of thing. So I don't see that as a competitor in that way. But Bitcoin is different things to different people. So it's been a terrible store of value if you bought at the top, but if you're in Venezuela or Argentina, you've actually made money still. And if you're in China, and it's still a good medium of exchange to get money out of the country. And we've never had an asset like this, which is so many different things to different people. Once the Lightning Network continues to roll out, it's going to be a great payment system, even competitive for Visa and MasterCard. It's going to be cheaper for merchants, which we've never had before. In terms of brand and adoption, it's got this far with absolutely no brand and no company promoting it. And everyone is telling their friends about this sort of stuff. So we've never had an asset like this in history. I think we're going to see the biggest global FOMO of all time the next time we passed 10,000 or the old all-time highs. And I actually think that's when we're going to have a bigger bubble. So we're going to go to 100,000, then drop back to maybe 20,000.
You heard it here tonight, and we've got this filmed, Nuggets. So you got to. You didn't say you're going to eat something, but that's all good. Hang on, Dr. James. Dr. James, I think you were abutting with Fred.
Yeah. So on the question of the all-time mining power, max that we've got right now, obviously, I strongly believe that the mining power is what does protect the network and what gives it value. Limited supply, you've got to work hard to get these Bitcoins, so you either mine or you buy it for cheaper, usually. The question is, though, I've been looking at a lot of YouTube channels where mining operations managers have been shutting down their businesses. They've been closing up, returning their video cards and the like. And I guess the question that I have is this legitimate, decentralized power that's coming online? Or is this a whole batch of new ASICs that are being purchased by some large power in, say, China, for example?
I think, yeah. I was going to start. I think that you're talking about capital flows, and capital moves from one person who's invested in something to someone who is not. I don't think someone is shutting down their cards, and I know people who have been buying thousands of ASICs. You can't buy an S17 right now. They're all sold out. I don't think that necessarily people are shutting down their miners. I think actually the miners are actually taking in capital while this is down, and they are like re-expanding. I think you're going to see, as I said, a massive increase. I think it's going to come through again, and it's going to keep protecting Bitcoin even further. I think it's that's the cycle, right? It's a natural cycle, and we had that, but it trails it a bit. We were seeing the down, but that was when the price was down, and it took a long time for it to follow. Like hash power doesn't follow price. Price leads, and then hash power, I guess, follows. So it's a little bit the other way around.
I guess what I'm saying is, I believe that there is more mining power, at least in terms of hashes. But that mining power, if you can't go to an online store and buy a miner, who is buying it? And is it becoming less decentralized?
It's absolutely becoming less decentralized, and it's institutional organisations buying them. Yeah, so I mean, in Australia, George and Fred and I know two brothers who have recently set up a institutional grade mining facility. One was a infrastructure investor for 15 years, and the other one was an energy banker. And they have contacts around the world that can get them latent energy, so they can turn up to big hydro plants anywhere in the world and say, "What's your behind the meter energy that you're not using?" And they might go, "It's actually 10 megawatts." So they'll just turn up, install the shipping containers, and the miners just start whirring, immediately. It's a private company.
Quick question here. Oh, George?
I would just also add too, like in bear markets, the other thing that's interesting about mining is that you don't get innovation in like people in the mining war. So like you don't get bigger, faster chips. So like right now you're going to be using older chips as the hashing power rises. So it's going to be a more open competition, and also just the hashing power will rise faster until people innovate again. And that's not going to happen still, because you are right, there are still tons of miners who are in loss even as the price has been going up. So you're going to have to see much higher prices before that happens, but it's just an interesting side effect of it.
Can I just say one thing? I think it's almost, and I don't know if this is controversial, but it might be a kind of logical inconsistency to say that sunk cost and variable cost, so like a stake, is protecting the underlying intrinsic value of Bitcoin, because all the mining cost is meant to do is create civil resistance. It's not meant to create value. Now, what you're saying is the value of Bitcoin is fundamentally determined by the sunk and variable costs of the miners. So therefore, you're saying that proof of work is no different to proof of stake. And I think that that's quite dangerous, because it leads to we all know what will happen if that is the case. It'll just mean that centralisation will tend to centralisation because of efficiency gains. and so it becomes like a kind of a pyramid. So the thing that I think that is true is that competition for mining has fallen, and what is interesting is that the opportunity for decentralisation still remains, because there's still an ROI for people who can undercut power prices. But I don't think it's fair to say that that is what is underpinning the value of Bitcoin. I think that's underpinning the security of it.
Okay, quick question here.
I just wanted to ask a quick question of each of the five of you. How do you think, since the beginning of April Fool's Day, the balance of ownerships changed between smart investors and non-smart investors, where the smart ones are the corporates with the big information networks, the experts to analyse the information? Are they increasing their stake, or is it the non-smart investors who are buying in?
That's a very good question, actually. I would say you definitely saw post, especially a lot of the more trading orientated firms and funds, in Bitcoin, when it traded above that 6,600 level, there was a lot of new initiation of positions there from that, institutional community, if you want to call it that. I still think you're not seeing that same FOMO that you saw in December 17 at the moment, where the retail users have come back en masse. I think what you're seeing is the users who have been in the space now, for some of them, for some people, even if you'd call them, they only got in on the FOMO, they've been in it now for 18 months, and if they've survived that, they're actually now much more savvy, much more sophisticated themselves in what they're doing. So I think it's looking like a market that is rapidly getting much more advanced and much more aware of itself, and the participants in it are much more willing to be more active than they were. So I think in December 17, it was literally a case of users would come on, buy the coin, hope it mooned, and maybe sell it. Whereas now, I think the average user is doing a lot more turnover in their account.
I'd agree with that, and I'd also say that I think you can credit Binance in particular to up for a lot of this. I mean, they kind of invented the IEO market, and it was in the sense to get retail back into the market. So part of that whole process of having market makers and stabilizing the price and getting returns is that the small guy makes gains off of these things. Then he keeps his account in Binance and starts trading other assets as he makes money. So the IEO started to kind of get the retail guy back into the market. And then obviously you start to see the price of Bitcoin come back, and once it got above that 6,000 level, like Grant said, then people started to pay attention to it again, and it's held above there, and it continues to hold above there, and as long as it does, I say that there's plenty of interest, and we'll probably see iterations away from the IEO into other ways of fundraising relatively soon, unless they can fix the model so that it's a bit more democratic and fair. But overall, that model has really jump-started the whole entire marketplace, and it was done with the effects of just getting exchanges to get some of their guys' money back, and it's worked really well. Some of these have had less returns lately than they did before, but overall, if you look at the gains of most of them, they're still pretty good.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of accumulation. If you look at, I think Grayscale has 1.5% now. Is it at least 1% of Bitcoin, owned in their fund? That's a lot of Bitcoin, and they're continuing to get more and more people to buy more. And I think I met a lot of ex-investment bankers, fund managers, asset managers in New York, very, I would say almost kind of green. They've just sort of left that, and they took them a while to get used to it, and they've jumped into now cryptocurrency, and they're setting up funds, and they are taking in, people are coming in through those channels now, but which is a little bit different than I think in the past. I think we led institutionally, and then now retail is coming over the top right now again. People are, you think about the conversations that people are having, they're like, it takes a while for the word to spread around. It's kind of this whiplash. It kind of takes a while, and now it's really coming around. Everyone's going, oh, Bitcoin's back. I think we saw a couple of, I think Bloomberg said it was back. I think AFR said it was back the other day. It'd be really interesting when we tally this up and see how many times that they said it was dead and now it's alive again. And I think there's a website about this as well. But I think, that people are looking at this going, oh, it didn't die. Like, it's confirmed now. They're cool with it. I think retail's going, okay, cool, well, let's get back in and let's get this show back on the road. What's going on? And then, CZ's invented some new things, like DEXs and IEOs, and I'm sure there'll be a whole lot of other new magical things created, which is awesome. But it gets people re-looking at this. I think it's great. I think what I'm interested in and what I find fascinating, if you want to talk about real use, is I'm fascinated by all the lending coins and the lending services that are going on, and they just keep adding more and more volume, which is very interesting because there's people actively using these coins and creating services like Celsius, Nexo. These I think are very interesting services, and I think from that, building out lending and borrowing and lending, so you can actually deposit your Bitcoin there when you're holding it, and you earn, I think it's like 6% or whatever it may be. That's a very interesting market. I think we saw some services in New York about proof of stake. I think you could like SASs, where you could just deposit your coins and get a percentage of the proof of stake. All of these new services are coming out over the top, and I think that's where we'll see a different style of crypto investing coming up.
Just one quick point on that. So until recently, the greatest equity boom we ever saw in history from 04 to 07 was basically predicated on short-term funding. So what's called repo within financial markets, which is, taking in assets and re-lending them out on, very, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 1 week things. And that is what fueled the market. So when Lehman Brothers blew up, its balance sheet, say, was worth about $100 billion. It had repoed loans worth about $200 billion. So it was funding itself, double its capitalisation every week. But that is why you saw the equity markets in the back end of 07, even when the US economy was clearly blowing up, went through the roof, was because of this lending borrow market that we're starting to see develop in crypto. And as Fred said, if the lend borrow market gets serious in crypto, it is a real big sign for things to come.
Can I just add to that as well quickly? We covered Maker very early on, which is the decentralized model of this, and it is so clunky and hard to use, and it already absorbed 2% of all Ether out there. So once that process gets easier to use, I've got friends that banks refuse to lend to that borrowed 50 grand against their own Ethereum on a hardware wallet to buy a deposit on a house. So people are already changing their lives by lending against their own Ether, and Bitcoin is going to be built into these models as well, as we're already starting to see. And all that does is take a extremely scarce asset and lock it up somewhere and take even more away from the markets. And so new entrants can't buy it up. And if we have all these new people coming in, particularly institutional investors that are going to want to buy a lot of these things, I don't think there's going to be a lot to buy off market.
I just add to that I think for me personally, like that's the most exciting part of crypto right now is decentralized or open finance, however you want to call it, and what the implications of that are. And lending is just one element of it. I mean, there's custody, there's derivatives, there's decentralized exchanges, it goes on and on and on. It's basically opening up finance through cryptocurrency to allow people who have not been able to get finance to be able to finance, and also allow crypto holders to also become financiers. So you're actually competing with banks. Like if you can offer better interest rates or better settlement times than a bank can, or other types of mezzanine financing, you can actually compete and help small to medium-sized businesses that can't access money. And like it's really powerful. It's like that's one of the things that is the key linchpins behind Ethereum, but it's moving to all other chains as well. And for me, like that's super exciting because you could really just slot in any of these things on the application layer, where if you're building something out that you have, some of these lending plays come in, you have some collateral plays come in, you have a decentralized exchange come in, and like along the way you can get financing and liquidity that you haven't been able to ever have before, and actually like manage your cash flow in ways that you haven't been able to. Like this is really powerful stuff for like lots of people in the world and lots of businesses. And it's done in a way where, the vendor lock-in of banks and other types of financial organizations is disrupted in a major way.
Great. I've got a question from Gibbo and James. Any other questions? and here, and one other. Okay, good. So there's a few. First nugget. What's the name of your dog, mate? And what sort of dog is it?
What are you talking about?
That dog
Not
behind you,
my
mate.
Beanie Babies.
No, not your wife. Down, just the dog behind you.
Oh,
Mate,
that's Henry.
down-
That's Henry, mate.
What's
I've
its
got
name?
a photo of little Louis up there.
Oh,
But, yeah.
okay, good.
Those are
Okay.
Bitcoin M&Ms.
No, just wanted to check. Okay, who's next question? Gibbo, I think. Then back to the doctor. Or no. Oh, hang on. Sorry, Gibbo. McNamara, you're up. First time. Great. Finally, get a question out of you. Welcome tonight, sir.
Feeling the pressure. Fred, this is a question for Fred. One of your, I guess, key expertise is building brands. Can you see a future scenario where a different blockchain owns the Bitcoin brand? And secondly, is Craig Wright Satoshi or fake Toshi?
Well, I have a couple of videos you can watch to determine for yourself on all of that. But you know, I'm not one to I like that guy's. Wow, that was intense. I think it was probably one of the most intense experiences of interviews where it just got out of hand and there was a freight train coming and I didn't realize it and I just got in the way and just I was straight over it.
Where do we see that? Which channel?
You go to Crypto Finder, you can check it out.
Craig Wright, good.
I think if you type in Craig Wright, it's ranking pretty well as well, which is kind of interesting. But you know, I don't pick coins. I'm not a great trader. There's great traders in here. You can ask about those chains and which one's going to rocket and things like that. That's not my expertise. But I think, you know, it's an experiment, right? And the only thing I would say, and this is probably controversial, if you look at the N-chain business, and it's actually not owned by Craig Wright today. It's actually owned by a private equity firm. And I'm actually fascinated as to what they're doing with N-chain and where that goes. I think that's what I find quite interesting. Craig Wright works for N-chain today. And he doesn't own N-chain, which is interesting. And there's some other people that own that, and you can do the research on that. And I was made aware of a lot of things about Craig Wright after that interview. Let me show you now. But I thought it was important to speak to him and hear him out and understand what he had to say. But he dominated me 10 times over.
Is he the most influential man in crypto in Australia? Nugget?
I think he's made himself relevant again, but I don't think at the moment he isn't. Unless he can prove anything, and he hasn't proven anything yet.
Okay, great. Gibbo, question. Two questions. Oh, mate, hang on. That'll be $5.
Very quick questions. First off, Grant, congrats, mate, on your upcoming launch.
Into the speaker, mate. We're
Can't wait to
filming.
see what the liquidity
Gibbo.
looks like in that pool. And you mentioned earlier that you're potentially looking at launching derivatives by the AFSL mechanism.
Yep.
The first part of the question is how, like, we've seen that inflection where the volume in derivatives is now bigger than the volume in the underlying physical trading. How do you think that will extrapolate over time as the volume in derivatives increases on a fixed supply asset? And the second question goes to Tim. Do you think then that is an opportunity for Australia? You mentioned Australia from a regulatory standpoint can maybe take steps in that direction. Do you think the derivatives trading side is a big opportunity for Australia as well?
Yeah, okay.
So
to your first question, Gibbo, liquidity. So one of the strong points that we're going to rest upon at Mine is the fact that we are a part of a global aggregated order book and liquidity pool, and that is some of the biggest liquidity providers in the globe will make prices into that. So from launch, unlike some of the other Australian competitors over the last 12 months, it won't be an empty order book on launch. There will be plenty of actual real bids and offers in there, and then obviously as we onboard users, they will also do that. And then as the global network of basically partner exchanges bring on users, so at the moment there is one coming online in Dubai, I believe, which will be the first regulated exchange in Dubai. So if they bring on 250,000 users, and those users all want to go on there, and that liquidity will be reflected into our pool. And then obviously my job on top of all of that is then to go select and find idiosyncratic liquidity pools around the world. So pretty much the last 2 weeks, my conversations have been speaking with various different people who are offering now, dark pools and things like that around the world of pockets of Bitcoin to try to price off of. Derivatives in relation to a fixed asset, I mean, I think you've seen gold now for how many ever years do a pretty good job of that. I mean, what was it, about 2012, I remember when we had that massive gold rally, and Zero Hedge at the time, literally, it was the top ad, and they posted it. And it was one of the things that could have worked and never did. They literally said, if you own gold via a future now, or whatever mechanism you have where you can claim that physical gold, go and claim it, because there is not enough gold in the world to get paid out, and you're going to cause the price to go through the roof. Obviously never happened. So, that same mechanism is in place of where, unless we have something where you have a real, truly coordinated global effort of where people demand their physical Bitcoin in exchange for their derivative product, I think you can see, that volumes to keep to expand.
Tim Lee?
And I guess in relation to the regulation, I mean, it's a very interesting topic, isn't it? I mean, Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous, and AML and KYC are always going to be a challenge. But I think, if we can get over those particular structures, and we can make, I think the banks feel comfortable with that the AML and KYC has been established, and the banks are on side, I think, if we get some regulation, I think it's going to be great. But I mean, globally, the way the banks are reacting to crypto in general terms, from what I'm hearing anecdotally, is a nightmare. In San Francisco, the banks over there are closed for shops, closed up shop in terms of crypto-based businesses. In Malta, it's almost impossible for a bank right now to actually supply a bank account for organizations in Malta. And I mean, it's equally here. I know there are challenges. So I think it's a very broad question. I think if we can make everybody, the traditional players and traditional stakeholders, feel comfortable, then regulation will come in. But I think it'll be very slow.
Great. I've got a question up the back here.
Oh yeah, hi. This is for Alex. Watched briefly some of your videos on gaming last week, and some good interviews there. And I guess I just wanted to get a bit more just general thoughts on that area. As a 45-year-old, I'm not overly interested in gaming so much these days, but I kept hearing it from a number of people as far as an investment and as far as how big the adoption is in that case, that it could be something that just from an investor point of view. But I guess I want to see your thoughts on how you got interested in that and what could be happening down the track.
Yeah, so we did have Gaming Week on the channel last week, and we had some fantastic guests from Wax, Engine, the Gods Unchained guys in Australia. But when you think about the smartphone and how that's taken off, and people walk around, immersed in their device, how do you think people are going to behave when they have an immersive experience in their lounge room, whether that's virtual reality or augmented reality, and they can collect these items and play games, and now for the first time they can move that over into another world, into another game, and take their reputation with them and all that sort of thing. So I just think, you can go down the rabbit hole here where we are going into that sort of futuristic world where we're all going to spend more time in simulations and the Matrix than we are in the real world. But I just think gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, the numbers are mind-blowing. That industry makes more than the movie industry already, and I think it's only just scratching the surface, particularly for investors and Wall Street taking the gaming industry seriously. So I just see that as just such a huge part of our future.
One question at the back here, then I'm coming down, slowly working my way down to old mate over the front there.
Hey, another one for Alex here. So recently, Congressman, I believe Brad Sherman, called to outlaw cryptocurrencies. Do you see this as an overall bullish or bearish indicator for the market?
As I said before, Bitcoin is different in every country, and I don't think you can ever ban Bitcoin. It's just software, and we have devices all around us. Everyone is going to be running Bitcoin regardless of what Congressman said. Now, if the G20 nations all came together to make Bitcoin illegal, then it would probably put Bitcoin back a few years, but that doesn't mean that all these other countries aren't still going to adopt it like we're already seeing, because they don't have a banking system, A, or B, that their banking system has failed them and already hyperinflated. They don't have a way to get money out of the country. You know, when it's putting food on the table, you're not going to tell someone that you're not allowed to use Bitcoin and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure who elects these officials in a number of countries, including Australia sometimes, but the people have a voice, and that's why they're putting on yellow vests and going to the street. And if we continue to have bad monetary policy and inequality, there's going to be more and more people protesting against banks and these actions and adopting Bitcoin.
George?
I'd say that banning Bitcoin is probably the most bullish thing that can happen to the price of Bitcoin. I hope for a ban of Bitcoin.
Once again, you heard it here first.
Can I just add to that?
You can.
I think I disagree with you, George, in terms of it being bullish, because globally there are a number of sovereign coins that are being created. You know, for example, Barbados is actually launching their own cryptocurrency imminently. You've got places like the ruble, like the yuan, a whole variety of cryptocurrencies are being looked at within sovereign coins. And once you have that structure, why will countries enable in inverted commas, a digital cash to happen where they've got no ability to formally tax it and no ability to look at the AML KYC of it? If you look at just history, I mean, history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. And if you look at, in India, going back 18 months ago, they banned the high-value rupee note overnight. In Nigeria, they did the same. They banned the high-value cash notes overnight. Why? Because there's so much cash seepage, which they can't tax. So my view is, if Bitcoin was banned, and I think it would be very tough to ban it, and I agree with what Alex is saying, in difficult countries, it has a very clear position to play. But then in the Western economies, if Bitcoin is banned, and I think they would ban it in terms of the mining and the ability to exchange it. And if that happens, the price of Bitcoin, in my opinion, would fall dramatically as it goes underground. And I think it will lose its value, and things like Facebook stablecoin would actually
Back into the
take
Silk Road.
I'd say,
George?
I say that that's an interesting point, and I take that on board. But I'd say the long arc of history is that centralization is very fleeting and decentralization is very long. I guess it depends on your views of nation states and governments and the relevance that they'll have in the next phase of the world that we live in. And again, I come back to the point that I think that governments no longer have control and monopoly over money. And when they don't have control and monopoly over money, there'll be a different organization in the future. We're already seeing that with cryptocurrency. I mean, technology is creating money. The belief systems around this money are being adopted. And for me personally, I think that governments and a lot of the views that they have around enforcing stuff, without the monetary power behind them, they won't have in the future.
But I think I'll just add one thing. I think, yes, they don't have monopoly over money, but they will control monopoly money.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Next month's bet. Now, question up the back here from the young man in the bonnet, please.
Evening, panellists. Okay, this question is on the subject of 51% attacks. Salvation or abomination? So a bit of context. Recently, with the 7,000 Bitcoin hacked from Binance, watching that unfold that morning, there was a balloon floated briefly, CZ tweeting that his Brains Trust was contemplating the idea of an orchestrated block reorg, getting paying miners in effect to do a 51% attack on the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, I tweeted very strongly against that, suggesting that that's anathema in the sense that, well, your centralised exchange shitty security problem, not the protocol's problem. It gets a little bit more of a grey area when you look at Bitcoin Cash recently. I think it was the 17th of May, thereabouts. There was a miner that managed to get coins that were not necessarily meant to be obtainable, spendable when mining. And the two top mining organisations, I think BTC.com and BTC.top, combined their power to do a 51% attack on the chain that they support. So that's more of a grey area to fix what's a flaw in the protocol. So good, bad, What would that do if that happened with Bitcoin? 3 mining pools could do a 51% attack. So if there was a perceived flaw in the protocol and it was deemed by the cartels that control the power, we need to fix this, what would that do to the confidence?
I think, based on, I guess, what I was saying earlier, you've got this, why would the 3 mining pools do it? They'd only do it if the value in that action would be greater than not doing it, and I don't think that is ever the case with Bitcoin. There was a great post, maybe I'll share it on the channel, kind of doing the maths on a 51% attack on Bitcoin. We did the maths on it several years ago for a demonstration. Firstly, it undermines your own stake, and if you're sitting on a pile of Bitcoin as a miner, which a lot of those guys are, then the value of your enterprise in the future return on it is going to be close to nil. So I don't see it happening because of that proof of stake.
So a couple of things with this as well is, one, that they didn't do it and that he worked out it wasn't economical is a great sign. You know, I think, but just to go back there, there was a time when Bitcoin was reorganized. There was a misprinting, and I think 1.8 billion Bitcoin got made or something like that, and then they did come together and they did fix it out. So just there is history in that. That they haven't done it again, I think, is interesting. I think it's the mathematics. I spoke to Jimmy Song about this in New York as well. It's insane how much you'd have to spend and keep spending to make that happen. And I think, yeah, as John has said, like basically the incentives is just not there anymore, which is great.
Good. Should have had all you guys here last month's Bitcoin debate. Let's move on from that. Grant, you were talking to me earlier on about one-click trading, mate. I hadn't heard much about it.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, I guess it's so one of the features of our platform will be very similar, I guess, to some other famous Australian exchanges at the moment. One that has a rocket as a symbol, that offers users to come on there and be able to buy a certain quantity at a fixed price. So we're going to up the ante on that. So there's going to be no fee on that transaction, and the price will be super competitive, and that'll be users be able to do that for anywhere from 50 Australian dollars probably up to, we're just working out the limits at the moment, but it's either 100,000 or 500,000 Australian dollars that you'll be able to hit the screen to get done.
Great. And was that 12 months free for Crypto Sydney members trading? Was that?
No, that's permanent. Zero fee on through the buy sell platform part of our
for
exchange.
Crypto Sydney members.
For everyone.
Great. For everyone.
Everyone.
Oh, come on.
For everyone.
Okay, well, no, we're going to pay you Crypto Sydney members. We'll just pay.
No, we're not about to pay.
Okay. Right. Okay, cool. So that broke us away from the Bitcoin debate. Where's the question? Is this Bitcoin? We're off Bitcoin now. It's a fun one? Okay, good.
So there was a fun little thought experiment on crypto Twitter the other night. It was whether or not a public blockchain could bail out / buy a failing bank.
Does it start with D?
Yeah, you got a Deutsche Bank. And whether or not, that is really a viable option. Is it desirable? Do you want to push into an old traditional institution? Anyway, I just thought I had fun with it, and I wanted to open it up to the floor.
So I think there's a lot of different pros and cons, but owning a bank and operating a bank is a full-on thing. Like you're talking about crypto Bitcoin regulation, like banking regulation is just like rooms of lawyers and compliance, and like it's a whole other dimension. I'm not sure if that would be necessarily a good thing. I think it's a great idea and it's fascinating in and of itself. I think people are calling to buy the dip on that as well. The ultimate falling wedge. But I think that, I don't know whether that would be necessarily, I think that might be a stone around crypto's neck potentially, than to reboot it. I think you just start a new bank.
Oh, yeah, I think obviously the EU would never allow that to happen. But if it did, I mean, it'd be a cool exercise in governance, right? So, if it's a proof of stake chain, then you've got to go through that whole architecture and actually start to develop out a way where decisions could be made. So what do you basically make the chain act as like a board of directors type thing, and then you keep the
Bring
underlying.
back the DAO.
Yeah, maybe. And you keep an underlying exec team, and that's how it works. I mean, it would be a super cool experiment, but I'm not quite sure how to play out that aspect.
If it makes a public blockchain too big to fail, I'm all about it.
Okay, question here down the front.
Hi, this one's for Alex. Mate, this one's quite token specific, being an advisor on a few different tokens. I wanted to ask, mate, if there's any information you could give us around the Agri token. That's a really close one to me, and also Bancoris. In particular Agri, because I think it's really good. It'll help out the Aussie farmers. But just any info that you can give us on Bancoris as well, if that's okay.
Nothing more than they've put out publicly, but I think the STO world, as you know, has got a lot more regulation around it, so they can't really state too much until they know more, which is frustrating at times. In terms of Agri, I know that they're developing really well, and I agree that it's a great project in a great industry, and we should be able to have some more announcements out soon. But it is frustrating when you see all this stuff happening behind the scenes, and from the outside looking in, it looks like there's nothing happening.
Good. Question. Questions. Jonathan, here we go. Thank you, sir.
Really simple one for the panel. Where are the lead areas in Australia for this sort of work?
What type of work?
As in any crypto work, where are the lead communities or the biggest communities in Australia? Say, which states or which cities?
It's right here.
You're right here, absolutely.
The centre of the centre.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Good question. Everyone keeps asking me about it. I keep saying there's a lot happening in Sydney. You know, there's a big community in Brisbane and on that coast. Melbourne. I don't get a big vibe in Melbourne.
I think there's a lot happening in Melbourne.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think they've actually been pretty, obviously BTC Markets is based out of Melbourne. There's a big community around the global blockchain global guys and startup space. And if you've been down there, there's a lot going on in Melbourne. I think there's, they're the two biggest cities. It's where the most people are. It's kind of that's. I think it's fair to say there's a similar amount of activity.
I'd say
Launceston Nuggets.
Yeah, Sydney. The power sits here. I would say basically from a very biased point of view, is it's the seat of where all the traders are. So there's 3 proprietary trading firms here in Sydney who are by far. One of them is the biggest in Asia. One of the biggest traders in Asia of Bitcoin. Full stop.
Who's that?
I'm not going to say that, but yeah. So I think that aspect is within Australia. Within Sydney, the trading community of former professional traders who have come from traditional markets is extremely strong. So that's how basically I came into this, and also most of my contacts who I know in this room all came from that same community. So it's not on the development side, but certainly on the speculative provider of capital side, it's Sydney for that.
And do you get the same? Is that mirrored in Melbourne?
So traditionally, Melbourne has actually never had such a strong trading firm community, for whatever reason that is. So it's always mainly been a Sydney thing.
I think is that where the pipe comes in?
Oh, also then can't forget, Queenslanders are always pretty good at having a pun at anything. So it's looking good up there.
Yeah.
I reckon, Jonathan, we've given the amalgamation between Blockchain Australia and ADCA, I think we'll see a lot of a single voice starting to happen. I think with David driving that whole structure and driving from the bottom up as well as the top down, I think that's where the community will ultimately gravitate towards, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Jonathan, also, just Lasanka here from Independent Reserve. So I think from an exchange side, we have, according to the Accenture survey last year, we're about a third of the Australian trading market. And we're Sydney-based. We also launched IR Ventures, our accelerator, which has, a number of blockchain startups and a bunch of investors that are kind of working through there, and also a trading, prop trading group. And also we're launching an early stage venture capital limited partnership, which is investing into blockchain startups. So the reason is you chose Sydney, one is because we live here, but also a hive of activity.
Tassie, well, we got Nuggets there. It'll tell you all about Launceston, what's happening down there, mate. Well, we've got the president
we
of Blockchain
normally
Australia
get between
there.
50 and 100 if we do have a meetup down here. And as you guys know, we did go around Australia to every capital city during the last bull market, and there's hundreds of people show up in every capital city. So I think the crypto community is even bigger this time around, which we'll do again soon.
Yep, awesome. Question over here. Jonathan, did that give you a good synopsis? Yeah, good. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, talking about trading, I have a question in regards to Bitcoin price action lately. So the whole world of YouTubers were looking at $6,000 resistance. And why did you think that it went through, like it just mooned through and without any resistance at $6,000 to $6,800?
I can take this one if anyone wants.
Good question. Go Nuggets.
So don't listen to YouTubers; they've got no idea what they're talking about. So what started to happen was a lot of the what I call dumb money started to try and front run that trade, and we did a video a few days before this actually happened saying the number of shorts is just increasing and increasing, and if that doesn't stop, that's going to slice through 6,000 like butter. And sure enough, they all got liquidated, and it propelled the market $3,000 higher. And the dumb money is often wrong.
Right, okay, any other responses to that? Sorry, I just got ADD, I got sidewalked. Where are we at? Hang on, we're on level 20. Any other answers to the resistance at 6,800? It's pushed through, hasn't come back. Okay, no, next question. No? Okay, next question.
Is securitization the killer app for blockchains or digital currencies? I mean, you know how there's a dozen gold, securitizations, but real estate is huge.
Long term, yes.
And
so
also,
in the US at the moment, the best project doing that is one called Figure, Figure. The fellow who created that has already done a massively successful business called SoFi, which was a social lending platform in the US. He's now created his own blockchain. They are now not just securitizing the things to trade, they are actually getting loans on chain. So at the moment in the US, you can trade a corporate loan. So if I'm JP Morgan Chase and I make a loan to IBM, that can then get traded to a different bank. That takes 14 days settlement. They have put that loan on chain. That now can settle in a day. So that's a very exciting project, but I think that is just the beginning of it. And funnily enough, the biggest investor into Figure and that blockchain is Credit Suisse, because they see the power and the ability of what they can do. Oh, absolutely. I mean, for countries that want control and information over their citizenry, it's a great tool. I mean, if you've got every deed, legal, lien, etc., on chain, it's very easy to track down everyone who owns what and when and things like that.
Quick, hang on, Glenn's got the microphone. Glenn's got a quick question here.
JP Morgan and the other big players, are they using private chains that are...
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they've got an interest in... Sorry, yeah. Very brief, yes. Yeah, they're using private infrastructure between them and their clients.
They running Stellar, Jono?
JP Morgan, no. But there's a bunch of banks that are, and there's good reason for that. Because sending money internationally still sucks, and they're not going to use Bitcoin. So I think there's an interesting, room to compete with Swift, and you've seen IBM do that.
Yeah. So tell us what's so good about Stellar?
Well, I kind of gave the analogy earlier tonight to Tim actually, and I think that.
Change footy teams. You're an Ethereum man.
Whatever. So I think that Stellar kind of looked at. This is a good joke. Stellar looked at Ethereum and said, it's kind of like, well, Stellar is to Ethereum what Instagram was to Facebook. What was everyone doing on Facebook? They were taking photos. So what was everyone doing on Ethereum? They were issuing tokens. And so Stellar's a nice infrastructure for certain use cases. We're using it on a particular project. It's a microfinance project. It's essentially creating kind of distributed banking infrastructure for small communities. And that's, the blockchain as empowering distributed ledger, that's cheaper than buying a banking license in contexts where you don't need one and where you could interface with other payment methods. So, yeah, there's all sorts of great projects out there that in this winter have been forging ahead, and people are actually using this technology, which is a really positive thing. It's really exciting to see that happen, irrespective of what's going on, on the markets, because the markets are, I think, back to the previous point, they're still actually tiny and almost irrelevant to the technology from a fundamentals point of view, except for perhaps Bitcoin.
I think I was just going to say, going back a couple of years ago, I was on a panel in Melbourne at a conference, and ANZ asked a question in relation to exactly the point you were saying about private blockchains. And the discussion eventually finished up with the idea that the ANZ guy was saying, as a private blockchain, I know you, you know me, and I know that you know me. So you know exactly who's on the chain. If you've got Stan Stanislavski from Vostok in the Russia, you don't know what the hell's going on. So realistically speaking, nobody's going to look at in my view, at a decentralized structure for core competency, in my opinion, in a lot of enterprise-based structures.
Okay, we've got any more questions? We've got questions in the audience. Who's got a burning question? Audience? Question. Omar, did you have a question? Hang on, mate. We're recording this. This is going live via satellite to all around the world. Got to have your microphone.
What do you guys think about CBA and their issuance of the bond on the blockchain and the protocol behind it?
I think it's great. I think it's the way things are going to go. The underlying technology that blockchain has is perfect for a lot of banking and financial transactions. And it's the way, just going back to the point of the earlier question about security tokens, that whole underlying nature of the ability to transact quickly, clean and efficiently and with full auditability and is going to be incredibly powerful. So I think personally it's the way that banking will go. At that top level, that's where bond issuance is going to go, no question.
Okay. Any more questions?
I got a question for the panel.
Awesome.
I'm interested in what everyone thinks about Binance, particularly with it launching a DEX, an IEO platform, and how it might compete with Ethereum in terms of if you had a new project and a new coin, maybe you would start by launching it on Binance chain and therefore causing a bit of issues for Ethereum and Stellar and all these other platforms when they control the exchange, and everyone loves Binance and trusts Binance. And I wonder, is it got too much control or power?
By the way, Binance will launch a stable coin soon.
Right. And they've got a stable coin, they've got a DEX, they've got a chain. They've got a big exchange, they're launching derivatives.
I think it all comes down to this idea of the cost of acquiring a customer. I mean, they've got a massive customer base. They're trusted, in inverted commas, in the traditional sense of the word. So it's just like Facebook. They've got that, the cost of acquisition is going to be sweet FA, so they can just ramp it out. Are they going to be too big? Perhaps. And, there's an argument that Facebook should perhaps be broken up when it's doing this stablecoin. And could it be the idea, ultimately, that maybe Binance is going to get too powerful and maybe has to get broken up? I don't know. I think but it just makes commercial sense to them.
Yeah, they've gone full horizontal.
Yeah.
So what else you can do with your war chest? Will they go vertical and start mining their own coins? I don't know if they're already doing that. You tell me. But do you trust them to be as good as what they do in one arena as they are in the other? I think this is also a question you could levy to any big business, Facebook, or, I think if you believe that just having customers is enough, then why isn't every telco a bank already? Why don't they own every transaction? Brands aren't good at traversing the kind of expectation gap from customers when it comes to competency, and I don't think that Binance necessarily can jump that gap across all those arenas and be really good at all of them.
Centralized exchanges are to decentralized exchanges as private blockchains are to public blockchains. So I think it's brilliant. They're going to disrupt themselves over time. Right now, their decentralized exchange is not decentralized at all. It's pretty centralized, but they're making moves, I think, in lots of ways. One, that things will move to decentralized exchanges over time for lots of reasons. Basically, around regulatory moats is one. Two, as we move into decentralized finances, you need decentralized exchanges to do things, and they will continue to make money off of that. And I think it's pretty much the strategy around Binance has been pretty brilliant all along. It's an interesting model because no one thought that an exchange could turn into a chain, and Binance has done it all. They've, and now they're having projects like, if you want to list on our exchange, if you want to do an IEO on our exchange, well, then you have to move to our chain. So, like, a lot of these projects will have now an Ethereum token, they'll have a Binance token, which is using Tendermint and in partnership with Cosmos, right? But like, they're doing things that are really interesting where there's vendor lock-in on one side and then promoting decentralization on the other side. So CZ is, very savvy, and I think he's just planning for a future where, his exchange may run into regulatory problems, and the decentralized exchange will probably be able to survive on its own because you can't shut down a decentralized exchange.
Yeah, actually, I think George hit it. Was exactly right there. I think the biggest risk to CZ and Binance in the short term is he somehow does something that gets him caught in some regulatory trap. And in that case, it'll unravel pretty quickly. But at the moment, he's showing himself to be an extremely astute businessman, extremely well, defended, and have the right people on staff to make sure that they stay clear of all those regulatory traps. But I think by far that's his number one risk. If somehow he gets caught in something, the whole thing just tumbles down. So essentially, that's the other thing. It's built on it's a bit of not a house of cards, but it's built on a very singular failure point. It's sort of like, it's the Death Star. As long as no one fires a fucking torpedo down the exhaust thing, it's okay. But if they do, it's fucked.
Nuggets, you got a
Yeah, I think Binance is starting to get the community offside, but in a lot of ways it's like, well, who's doing it better? Where else are you going to go? I think IEOs are just crap dressed up in a nice package, and they're already starting to lose their luster. But Binance chain isn't really decentralized. I don't really see it as a threat. So yeah, I think they're going to lose market share though.
Okay, good stuff. I think we may have exhausted the audience with questions. Oh, Tim, funnily enough, this is like the third one in one night. It's taken me 16 meetups to get you to ask a question. No, you can leave it for the next one. Sorry, mate. Sorry. No. Or should we let him ask it? No. Sorry, mate. No. In fact, you can leave early, sir. Okay. No, come on then. Come on. You're all right. Oh, he got upset. Okay. The sponsor said
I'm a
you
massive
could
supporter of DEXs, agree completely, but how do you run a high-frequency order book on a decentralised exchange?
Make it centralised.
To run a successful exchange, you must have a medium to high-frequency order book, and I know Grant will agree with me on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that no one has been able to figure that out yet. So that is a problem that needs to be solved. I mean, the answer is right now, make it centralized. So, yeah, I don't know.
But
no, it's not there yet. Totally not there yet. I think over time it gets there like everything else. It's just going to take a fair bit of time. So in the meantime, this is exactly why CZ has centralized with the decentralized vision. It appeals to the people who are trading on the platform, but you don't have the wherewithal, the technology now to actually have a true decentralized exchange. So it's a nice thing to put out there, a nice thing to get projects on, but not something that's a viable competitor to his own exchange or any centralized exchange at this point in time. But it's like the same problems with lots of stuff in this space. Like either it's going to get solved or it's not. But the chances are, like with all technology, that when you have enough visionaries working on stuff, the problems will get solved over time.
I mean, just quickly, I know it's been long, we want to go a bit, but I think it depends on the type of swaps you want to do. Like if you want to run a high frequency trading algorithm, I think you'll find liquidity pools that do that then back into decentralized exchanges for kind of swaps across to different tokens. And if you look at, if you start thinking about money as like a whole bunch of different token types, they might be, you know, share of X, share of Y. They might be just hard asset-backed tokens. They might be things that are fully floating. And you want a venue where you can swap those in a decentralized way, where you don't have to you know, give your asset, your crypto asset to someone else to have custody of before you swap it. I think decentralized exchanges play a really big role in the way that new money is going to work together. How you're going to have atomic swaps across between token types. You'll need decentralized infrastructure for that. And I think that's where decentralized infrastructure will be useful. But will it be useful for high frequency trading? I don't see that happening for a long time.
Great stuff, great stuff. Hey, can you ask Bron to sit on our panel on the 12th of July? I mean, Emma? Because she sat on the first ever panel we did, and we haven't had her back. Can you do me a favour? I just was like, hang on. Yeah, if you can organise that, 12th of July. Okay, and on that note, I just wanted to say, big round of applause. Is there any last burning questions at all? No, great, so stick around. Nuggets, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Tom, we're going to wrap it up now. So a big round of applause for our guest superstar exclusive panellists to Crypto Sydney, Tim Lee, John O'Miller, Fred Schebesta, George Salmon and Grant Coulthard from Myriad Digital Exchange. Thank you. And we'll see you back here again on the 12th of July. Thank you very much. Oh, before I go, downstairs, we're going to the cidery bar. Thanks to the boys at Independent Reserve. Order as many drinks as you like, because we're going to knock this tab to $1,500 tonight. He knocked me off last month at $800, but we've gone to 15. Thank you very much. Have a great night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Over and out. Thanks, mate.
Thanks. Good.
All good? Yeah, thank you. George?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's sort of...
Don't rush everything in this divine turn. I peeped, you couldn't handle a woman in my caliber. Had to let you mature like some fine wine. Yeah, no validation, no applause. You don't have to prove you got it when you know it's yours. I don't wanna feel disloyal for wanting to do me. Then you act brand new when I know the cause. Wait, call it what you like. Till now I'd never been the selfish type. Till now I'd never told nobody no. Don't get it twisted, this shit didn't happen overnight. Still if your life is amazing when you get to fear. Can't be concerned about what they're saying over there. I make it clear, don't be in and out about what you hear. They say I always get what I want and it isn't fair, but life isn't fair, go. I can